to be living life with regret for not having done something because of what somebody else had thought. I think that in itself is allowing other people to have a power over you. I mean, even like, again, like I said, I'm very lucky I have very supportive and loving parents, but even if they didn't support my law school journey, I would still do it. It's what I have to do for myself that I know will not only benefit myself, but will benefit them and benefit the people around me. And hopefully I can give that back into the community. You have to really have a strong filter of what you allow into your energy, because I mean, like, when you're going through law school, people, when you plant a seed, the tree doesn't grow overnight. That's not what happens. But when you're going through law school and you're explaining to people, I want to be a lawyer someday, at some point when it's 5 years, so it's not just it's a long time of an investment. And so at some point you're told, just give up. Like, what's the point of all of this anyway? And if you listen to that, then we're never going to have any Polynesian lawyers. We're never going to have any Polynesian female lawyers. We're not going to have any Polynesian female judges. We're not going to have community makers, policy makers, and all these. Whatever. There are lawyers who are actresses now and acting and do different things, and whatever the case may be. But the point is that when you're doing something for yourself and you know that it's authentically true to your calling, regardless about what anybody says, you really need to answer that calling. Otherwise it's lost, and it doesn't stay there forever. That's the thing. It doesn't stay there forever. You either take that opportunity while it's there, or it's lost. And it's a shame if it's lost, because then you have to try and figure out your new purpose in life.
And you said it. Not only you have the opportunity, but we should encourage anybody that wants to be a lawyer, because like we want to be represented in the government. We want to be, what I'm saying? Like, sometimes I see a lot of people complain about how there's nobody in the government that can represent us, that understands our struggle. Well, there were a lot of kids that wanted to do that, but you kind of shame them.
Got in the way.
Right. Yeah. And now we don't have any representation. Like, we have to encourage people to become lawyers and doctors. So we have representation of people in places in society that make big decisions that determine the cultural and the aspects of our world. But not only have leaders in our society, but they have leaders that understand us as people. And you see all cultures. There's representation in the Chinese community, the Latino community, every community, but there's not a lot for us. But we have to encourage our kids to strive to that level and not like belittle and shame them and think they're female.
Like that's it. You have to be somebody. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be somebody. It's not, for me, when other people say that about somebody when they're trying to be somebody, I genuinely get baffled by it. I'm like, I really just don't get it. And then they're like, oh, that's because you're Pathakasi and you don't get it. And I'm like, well, no, I'm Tongan, and I still don't get it. I really just don't get it. But I think that in saying that, particularly with law, there's an overrepresentation of Pacific people in the criminal justice system, who need representation and who need people who can speak to their stories and actually understand what they're talking about culturally. And there was one time that I had gone to a talk, and they were saying how one of the judges, they took so much offense because he was talking and trying to help this defendant, and he had his head down the whole time and wasn't looking at the judge, which obviously is a sign of disrespect in Western culture.
Yeah.
But in Tongan, Samoan, and Polynesian culture, that's a sign of respect, is to be looking down and not, you're kind of making yourself lesser than so that they can speak over you and tell you what to do. And so then the judge got angry and was like, well, why aren't you looking at me while I'm speaking to you? And thank God the lawyer, who was a Pacific lawyer, was able to stand up and go, well, Your Honor, he is, got to speak to his cultural background and explain that that's actually a sign of respect. And it offered a different perspective to the courtroom, which is something that couldn't have been given unless it was somebody who understood and took the time to actually know what they're talking about in terms of the culture. So I think that, my experience in the law. We need 100% more Pacific lawyers out there, but especially to give that new perspective. And it's even better now. We've got, Pacific judges on the bench, female judges on the bench, and it's incredible to hear them say to defendants that they can relate to particular parts of their, their upbringing, their culture, whatever it is. Because then suddenly you realize we're all not that different from each other. We've just made different choices. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful thing, actually, because then you think to yourself, we have somebody there who actually understands this and can actually make the right decision based on everything that they know and their experience as a Polynesian and whatever the case may be. But it's, that's something that I think that is really, really important.
Yeah, and I love what you said. Like, we're all different, but we just make different choices. Yeah, and that's why whenever I see, like, I support you. When I ran into your page and saw what you were doing, like, I really for me, when I see Polynesians striving for success and striving for a better life, I mean, that motivates me, because if I see you doing it, I know if it's possible for you, that means it's possible for me, because I hate how in society and culture we have this stereotype that we can only succeed in sports, we can only succeed in rugby.
Oh, true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I used to be a victim of that. I remember growing up, my goal was like to make it to the NFL, and then when I realized that goal wasn't happening, I fell into a sort of deep depression. But because I had this narrative and this like limited belief that the only thing I could do with my life was play sports, and I grew up that way, just thinking I'm only valuable to society as an athlete. There's nothing more I could offer. And that's why I love having you on my podcast, but that's why I love your stories, just because I just want to let everybody know that if you're watching this, it's possible. You can do anything anything is possible in your life if you believe in it, if you work for it, and not allow any kind of negativity, especially those people that want to call you female. And it's funny, whenever I hear that, when people say, like, whenever I heard that, like, when people say, "Oh, if you're female," I always laugh to it, because I always want to say, "Oh, so you want me? So you want to be? You blaming me or criticizing me for trying to be somebody? Who do you want me to be? Like you?"
Yeah.
So are you the standard? Are you what I aspire to be?
Exactly. I genuinely do not get how that's an offensive thing, and I hear it. I think every Tongan at one stage, if they've done something a little bit different, they've been called to that. And it's such an interesting concept to me, because when you actually like translate it, it's like, so they want to be somebody. Elevate yourself. Don't let particular notions of who you should be stop you from being what you want to be. But even if it's going against the status quo, like I said, culture is constantly changing, and you're part of the change. And so if you're going to be called that, oh, well, okay, move on. There's a lot worse things in the world.
And this is a fact of, this is my truth, but I don't know, it's probably different. I don't know what about your experience, but every single person that's ever called me female, when I looked at their life, they weren't really doing much.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always funny. It's like, okay, so you don't want.
Yeah,
so I can't get offended. Or I was like, oh, actually, thank you for telling me I'm doing something in my life, because I don't want to be here. I don't want to live your life.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I'm just interested to hear what was like. I mean, when you were working towards your goals, like, what was the biggest, like, if there is any, like, biggest criticism or any negativity that you heard, that you heard based from other people? And I'm just interested to hear if there was any.
Not so much in terms of law school.
Okay.
Or like, I'll often get the odd comment disguised as a joke about how, I shouldn't be a lawyer, and, I should try and work on the home, be more domesticated, all that kind of rubbish. Which again, I have the humor. I can like laugh along with it. It's kind of irrelevant talk, but I think mostly in terms of modeling, there were definitely a lot of naysayers that I guess tried to impose their belief on what you can and can't be, particularly if you're an academic, if you're a lawyer, well, then you can't really be a model. You can't be in an industry that's predominantly focused on, in a way, a lot of self-promotion, because, you are the brand. And so I think that even more than that, being so, I guess, external with the way that you are presenting yourself and the things that you're doing, it's kind of, you're kind of, it's very vain if you don't understand what that person is trying to do. And that's something that a lot of, people in the culture don't really understand. The younger generation completely get it, but it's, if you're from the older generation, it's like, oh, she's so feeling. She's so, she's just so vain. And so I think that was probably a difficult thing to overcome. But again, it's like, focus on what you're going to allow in your energy. I told this story once, and everyone found it really funny. At the time, I didn't know why it was so funny, but now I can laugh at it. And I remember there was this one. So for a long time, when I got into modeling, it was a complete accident. I was literally buying food with my mom and my sister at Countdown, which is like a grocery store here in New Zealand. And there was this lady who was there at the checkout counter. I was outside waiting for them, and she was at the checkout, and she kept looking at me, and I was thinking, is she looking at me? Or like, I was like looking around like, this is really weird. Why is she looking at me? And then finally she like walks up to me, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like she's gonna talk to me. Like, this is so weird. And I was like, I want to say I was like 20 or something at the time. But she came up to me and she was like, look, this is going to sound really weird and completely random, but I think that you should get into plus size modeling. And so she gave me a bunch of numbers and a whole bunch of agencies, and was like, get in contact with them. So my mom came, she's like, what was this about? Like, what happened? And I told her, and she was like, oh, it's a scam. Like, it's all a scam. Like, don't ever trust people and all this kind of stuff. And anyways, we ended up searching the people that she had given me, and they were like legit people.
Yeah.
Reached out and finally, got an agent, and then have kind of been doing it ever since then. And for the longest time, I mean, even now, I don't really consider myself to be a model. It's just that I sometimes do modeling. And it's because a lot of the time there is a certain way of how you present yourself. And like, again, with modeling, you have really no choice of what you get to wear. I mean, obviously, once you're at a certain level, you get to choose and do whatever. You're the creative director, whatever.
Yeah.
But you don't really get to choose what you want to wear. And it's that notion of having to, I guess, be authentic to not just yourself in the industry, but, being able to represent the brand, actually saying no to brands that don't align with you, and not worrying about what other people can say, especially if it's like, if the dress is a short dress, I'm like, well, I love the dress. It's a beautiful dress. I'm going to not wear it and model it just because it's conflicts with somebody's conservative view of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that in terms of my modeling career, that was probably something that I really struggled with, was dealing with other people's opinions on what I should and shouldn't be doing.